Administration and Public Works Committee meeting of Monday, March 19th, 2012. We have a quorum. Can I get an approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 27th, 2012?
I move approval of the minutes of our meeting of February 27th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Items for consideration. City of Evanston payroll through February 26, 2012, $2,638,074.85.
I move approval.
Can I get a second?
What happens if we can't pass the payroll?
Second.
Second. I said second already.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. All those in favor? Aye. City of Evanston bills, fiscal year 2012 through March 20th, 2012, $3,941,913.91. And credit card activity for period ending January 31st, 2012, $81,880.63. And we have information about the bills.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Do we have any questions? Alderman Rainey?
Your light's working too.
Awesome, thank you. Alderman Rainey?
Yes, let me just get my thoughts together here. Madam Chairman, on the issue of 1817 Church Street, the $500, $500 to relocate urban garden, $500. When I chair the Community Development Block Grant Committee, and while I might have missed it, did we authorize the use of that property for an urban garden?
Mr. Griffin?
And whose urban garden? I don't really understand this.
Good evening, Steve Griffin, Director of Community and Economic Development. Yes, Alderman Rainey, about a year and a half ago, some of the rear property was authorized by staff for ECDC and a program that they had because they had some extra spaces and we weren't using that. It was understood that needed to be removed, but the bill you see was not just for the gardening removal. There was a lot of debris and supplies and trash that had accumulated. So it's a combination of some things. So prior to the execution of the agreement, we had to have the property in good order, so we went ahead and did that.
To where was the urban garden removed?
We only relocated some of the supplies with some ECDC properties. Daniel Shebbett's properties at, I believe it was 1904 church.
That's where you put this?
That's where some of the materials.
So there's really no garden that we disrupted?
No, ma'am.
It
was the materials, it was the boxes, it was some of the debris that was associated with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the bills list? Alderman Rainey? No. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A3.1, staff recommends the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a contract in response to requests for bids through the Municipal Partnering Committee to award the 2012 Unique Pavement Material Cold Patch Material Purchase to Gallagher Materials in the not-to-exceed amount of $50,000. Funding will be provided by the Streets General Fund in the amount of $30,000, from the Water Fund in the amount of $10,000, and the Sewer Fund in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. A3.2, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the renewal of the Watercraft Maintenance and Repair Services contract to Full Throttle Marine Incorporated in a not-to-exceed amount of $40,000 for the period of April 15th, 2012 through April 14th, 2013. Funding will be provided by the Fleet Services Fund for major maintenance account with a fiscal year 2012 budget of $950,000, of which $48,000 is allocated for these services. There is no increase in pricing for this renewal. All those in favor? Aye. A 3.3 has been removed from the agenda. A 3.4, staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the purchase of auto parts for 3 years from CarQuest in the amount of $76,000 annually. Funding will be provided by the major maintenance account within the Fleet Services Fund, which has a total budget of $950,000 for fiscal year 2012, of which $90,000 is allocated for this purchase.
Move approval.
Alderman Rainey?
Madam Chairman, I specifically asked the city manager for information regarding this, and I was told that staff would be bringing additional information. But before we get it, and there might be something that I don't know that happened here, but there is North Suburban Auto on Howard Street. He's been in business, the same person, in excess of 40 years. He once worked for the business. He now owns the business. He has employees at the business. He is a private operator. He is an Evanston business. He did attempt to secure this bid in the past, but for some reason he didn't follow through. He is this very same vendor for the Village of Lincolnwood. He went through the bidding process. This is not a local company. I know we like to say it. We used to say, Viola was a local company. I want to know, this is done out of Charlotte, North Carolina, this bid, by virtue of some national bidding service. I would like to know what was done to secure local bids. It looks like nothing. These are the kinds of purchases that local people, if not here in Evanston, Skokie, someplace local could really do. So I would really like to have more information.
Yes, I think
this company operates in the United States, Mexico, and Canada.
Yeah, come on up.
I really
I think we have more information.
Well, I think we didn't ask.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. Alderman Rainey, I tried to put a timeline together about the sequence of events what has gone on with this contract. So I'm just going to walk right through it, and I think it might have some of the answers that we're looking for here tonight. Originally, we placed this bid out in February of 2010, and it was bid 1099. And that particular bid required a $1,000 bid bond. There was a bid opening on March 2nd, 2010. We sent this bid out to 7 existing vendors, including North Suburban Automotive Supply.
I know about what happened.
In addition to publishing this bid in the Pioneer Press and the Chicago Tribune. Only 4 vendors were responsive. North Suburban Automotive Supply was non-responsive for sedans, vans, pickup trucks, and medium and heavy-duty trucks. We then brought this to council on March 22nd of 2010, and we recommended an Evanston-based business, CarQuest, be awarded this bid. We then withdrew this bid from the agenda because we could not say with certainty why North Suburban Automotive Supply did not bid on this based on your request, Alderman Rainey. You asked us why they did not bid, and we didn't have the answer. So we went back, staff went back to North Suburban to inquire again why they did not bid on this opportunity. And their response at that time was, we are not paying for a bid bond to do business with the city of Evanston. We then brought the same write-up back to City Council. It was on April 26, 2010, and advised Council, and then requested approval for this very award on this bid to the Evanston-based CarQuest. The bid was awarded based on Council's approval and subsequently renewed for 1 year since there was a 1-year renewal provision in this original bid. This took us through April of 2012. So then we looked at CarQuest, which is another Evanston-based business, and we took a look to see what they've done in the past 2 years, so to speak. And what they have done, this Evanston-based business, is a number of things. They expanded our parts line to suit our business needs beyond sedans, small and medium trucks, to even some larger trucks. They provide the lowest possible pricing based on a review of similar part invoices from other fleet vendors. So this has basically reduced our parts expenses. They provide deliveries 4 times per day versus 2 times per day, which has allowed us to reduce inventory on hand. This also reduced inventory expenses with no timely impact to service, vehicle downtime, which affects city services. So they've been a pretty premier vendor, if you will. We then took a look at, when we order from them, their fill rate for every order we place is in excess of 95%. We order on a daily basis from them, and a fill rate of 95% in the industry is outstanding. A couple other items that they've done for us: they've taken out our obsolete hydraulic fitting inventory and provided newer fittings on a no-cost basis for us. Took all this old obsolete inventory, took it out, replaced it with no charge. They did the same thing with obsolete hoses, and they did the same with obsolete fan belts and wiper blades. Again, it's an Evanston-based business that had done this for us. So in essence, when we look at them as a vendor, they have earned our business. It's based on reduced pricing, expanded product offering, a fill rate of over 95%, greater amount of daily deliveries, and the value-added services that I just recommended or just talked about in this competitively priced atmosphere. I mean, the marketplace for commodity goods such as auto parts, it's pretty thin.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine anything else that we can do. I mean, I think we've done everything with due diligence for the best interest of the taxpayers of the city of Evanston. They are an Evanston-based business. I've had other vendors come to me and say, why? Why are we not getting as much business? My response is, sharpen your pencil. Here we have an Evanston-based business.
Okay,
and all they have to
thank
do
you
is
very
be
much.
within 5%.
I appreciate everything you're saying.
Alderman Reed and
but-
Alderman Grover.
Yeah, I would just like to add one thing. I'm so happy that you're so thrilled with this organization that is really international. It's really not Evanston-based. It's like saying that Home Depot is Evanston-based or Target is. They have a business here, yes, and we all like to shop there as much as we can, anything in Evanston, including McDonald's, whatever is here. However, all that you said, I'm sure is true, and I'm so happy you're happy with this company. The fact of the matter is, we had to go out again. You did not give anybody else a chance. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying you should give North Suburban Auto. I'm not saying North Suburban Auto is better. I'm not saying North Suburban Auto has not changed their mind and they will not post a $1,000 bond. I am saying that it's like a $76,000 contract. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here, according to the documentation that we've received. I'm just saying that people should have been given a chance to bid on this. That is all I'm saying. I am not challenging your selection of who you think is the better or the best business that you can give this contract to. I'm saying we really don't know that things haven't changed and that a local company couldn't do this. This is a parts contract. Under $80,000 it's for. So it's not something that a business is going to go, belly up if they don't get it. It's a small contract. It's exactly the size of a contract that would be, well, I'll wait till you guys are finished.
And Alderman Grover, do you want to
Wait, they're talking. I just would,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
not talking to hear myself talk.
Sorry, I wasn't.
I have that. I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah. Don't mind me, I'm just talking. it's the size of a contract that we could be giving, or we could be giving an opportunity to Evanston firms to bid on. That is all I'm saying that you denied. You denied these companies the right to bid. You had a bad experience, or you had somebody who didn't follow through or refused the $1,000 bond in the past. These people have been doing business with the city of Evanston until the last few years for many, many, many years. Yeah, they might not be the big mocker that CarQuest is. They have no services in Mexico or Canada. They're only here in Evanston. I only ask that you give them an opportunity to bid. That's it. I don't think that's outrageous or off the charts. That seems like a reasonable thing, especially with a bid this size, a contract this size.
Alderman Grover, and then we'll have Suzette answer. Do you want to answer? Okay.
What I was going to, Alderman Rainey, you're correct. In 2009, we did do a substantial amount of business, and prior to that with North Suburban Auto. But as Lonnie pointed out, we previously have been working with several vendors for tires, tubes, without bidding anything competitively. We had relationships, and as a result of those relationships and customer service response, we used different vendors for different things. So we went back to look at, okay, you know, our costs are increasing, and as a part of the budget process, we really needed to bid out these items. So, and like I said, he identified how the process that we went through to solicit a response from North Suburban, and they weren't interested in providing a.
That was then.
That was then. That's right.
That's all I'm asking, that everybody be given a chance. You put this out to bid and let people bid on it. If North Suburban Auto and others don't respond, shame on them. It's not your fault. You gave everybody a fair shake. That's all I
Alderman
ask.
Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the last 2 years, have we used North Suburban Auto for any part supply?
Very limited.
But they're on the roster
$10,
for
$20.
various supplies.
Since in 2011 and 2012, we've spent a couple $100.
Yeah,
That's very minimal.
Is it just a happy coincidence that CarQuest participates in the U.S. Communities Purchasing Alliance, and that we've been, in this case, able to take advantage of the pricing through this?
Right, and even in a further reduction from what we were previously receiving from CarQuest. We will contact North Suburban and see if they have an interest, but and we did not do that again this year, based on their reluctance to provide a $1,000 bond and the cost savings associated with this contract. We typically, even when we join a group, we do some competitive pricing comparisons. Did you do those with the?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask Lonnie to talk about some of the comparative pricing that we do, because before we do, we make a recommendation, we actually do comparison pricing with other vendors to see if the quote that we're getting is actually a good deal. And the issue is we have the 5% pricing for if the Evanston-based business is within 5%. And I guess that we never made a distinction, and I don't know, and I would defer to Jewel to find out whether we make a distinction between a business that is located in Evanston, and CarQuest is located in Evanston, versus a national company. So, well, Wally.
But
Mr. Bobquist, did you want to say something?
But there is a distinction. I mean, there is a distinction.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. you know, this is a really good example of a struggle we go through all the time, and that is to balance using local vendors versus balancing the best item for the buck for Evanston residents. And there is no right answer to this. Staff found this U.S. Communities contract, and for those of you who don't know, the U.S. Conference of Mayors has this joint purchasing. So if you look in your agreement, it's a contract with, I believe, the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. So they are the master agency that is working through this U.S. Communities program to provide a dollar amount. We came to you based on the experience we've had with the local CarQuest dealer finding this contract, and it made sense to us. If it does not make sense to the City Council, we would urge you to direct us to go out and do a bid, and we will go through that process, and we can bring back to you the costs associated with the bid versus the cost from the U.S. Communities contract. We use joint purchasing for other things throughout the city. I think we'll look to do more joint purchasing. I think what makes this a little bit more difficult is that many of the things we would do joint purchasing for, and police vehicles come immediately to mind, is that we don't make police vehicles in Evanston, and we have no one in Evanston that sells police vehicles, to my understanding. So it's very easy to use a contract from the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois or the state of West Virginia to buy police vehicles, because we're not going to be impacting a local dealership with that. With the issue of auto parts, there's at least one local company that does that. So if it's the council's wish that in the future, when we have these close calls, that we go to the extra staff effort of going through the bid process and then compare it to an existing contract such as the U.S. Communities. The National League of Cities has a similar purchasing program. The state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, all agencies we can do joint purchasing with. If you would prefer as a council policy that despite what we think might be lower prices, we go through that exercise when we know auto parts. We have an item that was removed from your agenda this evening dealing with auto vehicle repair, the body repair, which I wasn't satisfied that we had done a due diligence on, because again, same sort of deal. Did we exhaust that we know that every place that does auto vehicle body repair was contacted? Because we've been here before. We've had this discussion before. So this is a different twist on this. And so I'd ask the council if in the future, when there is a commodity that can be locally obtained, despite what we think might be a lower price from another contract, we should go through the process. And if that's your desire, we're happy to do that. Or we'll use our best judgment like we did here. And if we make a mistake, then we're happy to take further direction.
Alderman Rainey?
It's not, you know, it's not a mistake. Don't keep putting it like that. What it is that people didn't get a fair shake. And I'm not saying that North Suburban Auto might say, you got to be kidding, I'm not going to do business with you. I'm not going to pay a $1,000 bond again. I don't know if they're paying that in Lincolnwood. I don't know if they now realize doing contracts with the city, with cities or villages, is a little different, and so they have to pony up $1,000. I don't know that. I just know that nobody was given a chance. And this is another reason why this is interesting is months and months and months ago, and I might be more sensitive to this than others because they are in my ward, and I do review the bills list, and I do see CarQuest. I asked, when is the CarQuest contract up for rebid? I asked that question. So it's not like I looked at this at 11 o'clock last night and said, ooh. It's that I have been concerned about this for months and months, and maybe a couple of years ever since the last time.
Sure.
Everything I've heard as an argument against North Suburban Auto is what happened the last time. You have no idea what it's going to be like going forward, whether they're capable of fulfilling the contract or not. If they are, if they're capable of bidding, all I'm saying is that they should be given a chance. Not that they should be given any extra credit, not that they should be pushed to the front of the line, just that they be given a chance. That's all. And I just don't see where that is asking too much.
And the challenge, Alderman Rainey, members of the committee, is this third way, and that is joining in partnership with either another jurisdiction's existing contract or the consortium as the U.S. Communities is. When does that make sense? And what I'm hearing from the council is you may wish to adopt a policy that says it only makes sense if we feel that the commodity is not available locally. Again, going back to the police cars, something like that. But
I think it makes sense. It makes sense if you compare it to local costs. And if local costs are higher, then it makes sense to
And
go.
again, the question for the council is the comparison was done by our Fleet Services Division, and they felt
Not this time.
that, well, there was, again, comparison versus bid. There was a comparison that was done, and Mr. Jeske felt that the prices warranted moving forward with the recommendation for the U.S. community. A bid was not done.
I did not think that Mr. Jensky got in touch with North Suburban Auto for this contract.
But he's aware of pricing, and I think that's, I don't mean to be mincing hairs, Alderman Rainey, members of the committee. I guess I'm looking for direction because we had this discussion a year ago. I would prefer not to have this discussion again, and if I can get a clear understanding from the committee where that line is, again, we're going to be looking at joint purchasing contracts more and more because, quite honestly, they save us money. But if, from a public policy perspective, in some cases, in some commodities, you believe they don't make sense, or they don't make sense unless we go through a full local bid, then that's perfectly fine, and we're prepared to do that. We've just not had this conversation before when it comes to these national contracts working with other jurisdictions. So we're looking for direction.
One last thing. We have a vision statement and economic development plan on our agenda. One of the things we're attempting to do is to attract businesses, to help them, to incentivize them, et cetera, and to keep and grow current businesses. This more or less flies in the face of that, actually. I think we should do everything humanly possible, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to get the lowest possible bid whenever we can. We're looking at contracts here under $100,000. We might even want to look at it that way. Commodities that are available here that are under a certain amount. You know, are we going to save $5,000 by going with the national contract or more? I mean, are we going to save $25,000, $30,000? Then absolutely. You would never find me fighting for the other alternative. But smaller contracts, and this isn't going to be the only thing like this. You know,
And that's why I'm glad we're having the discussion,
yeah,
because,
repairing fire trucks, we can't do that here. I understand.
well, but we
that.
do it to a certain degree.
But we can't, I mean, we use WRFs, I know that. We just can't do some of these projects. We can't buy an ambulance here. We can't do a lot of things here. But the few little things we can do, I think we should do it.
Alderman Grover?
I think we already use the U.S. Communities Purchasing Alliance in other contexts outside of
Seems
Public
like-
Works,
is
Parks
it-
and Recreation, maybe,
West
or
communities, we're not
do we
using it
use-
with the Office Depot contract now, are we?
the Office Depot came through U.S. Communities,
I never saw this before, actually.
right?
So
And-
the Office Depot is a national contract through the U.S. communities.
communities,
Which we
and-
piggyback on, and in part, we get sales tax revenue because much of it, we can get through the local store.
Right, but I think...
So it's not unusual, I mean,
No, no.
but Alderman Rainey's points are all valid, is that where are the parameters of this? Office supplies is a national type of thing. As far as I know, there is no local comprehensive office supply company based in Evanston that I'm aware of. So I think if the parameters for the council, if you're saying anything under $100,000 annually is something that you would like to see go to bid, and we can bring to you if there are other contracts. I mean, the number of commodities that this would fall into citywide, my guess is a pretty small number. And again, we've had this conversation before. We struggle when there's one business. In this case, we believe there's one Evanston business that provides this service. We want to do what is reasonable, balancing the local economy with the dollars.
We have Alderman Grover's follow-up question, then we have Alderman Holmes'
It was
question.
just another question that, for me, the question is, what's the premium we're comfortable paying for services and products from an Evanston-based enterprise? And I think part of that's reflected in our MWEBE policy, which states about 5%.
Right.
And that's all we can
is
do.
what we're saying levels the playing field for Evanston-based enterprises. And a savings of 15 or 16 to 30% puts it so far beyond the MWEBE policy. Maybe that's part of the thinking
And
behind
if you'd like that all
jumping on this, but
documented, when we
That's
come
part
for
of the
awards
discussion,
of
though,
things
is-
like this,
yeah.
it's additional work for multiple departments. But again, I don't imagine it's that many commodities during the course of a calendar year that we're going to have. So, Madam Chair, I guess look for direction.
Well, Alderman Holmes has a question.
My question is really simple. If I understood correctly, you did comparison pricing. I understand it didn't go out for bid, but if we're looking at comparison and pricing,
Yes, when we
was there
went out-
such a difference that would?
Yes, when we went out for bid, okay, we were still using other vendors.
But I don't think she's talking about going out
Prices
for
would
bid. The comparison pricing for this year.
For this year, no.
There's no comparison pricing. The only comparison pricing we go back to is 2009.
No.
Okay, but I think Ms. Robinson said that you've done comparison pricing, I'm sorry,
From 2010.
okay, so 2 years, the only thing we have is from 2 years ago. We have nothing now. I just want to be clarified.
That's
your
what I want.
question.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay. I have a question now. How much would this cost in staff time to bring all of these to bid? I mean, that's not only the differential between the going out to bid, what we're talking about paying now, and the MWP 5%. How much is this in real time if we do bid versus the way we're doing it right now?
Well, there is a spec that's prepared, and that involves the operating department. So Public Works, Mr. Jeski's staff would prepare a spec with the list of all of the, but first you would prepare the list of all of the commodities that would be purchased. Once that's done, it then goes to the purchasing department, and they put in all of the other city requirements associated with that. There's advertising. There's a solicitation period. Those bids then come back. They're evaluated. There's an MWBE review that's done. So I think generally speaking, it varies by operating department depending on when it comes to purchasing, but it can be 4, 6, 8 week process. Jewel, is that a fair statement? 4, 6, 8 week process on once it comes to purchasing?
You answer. I'm not shaking my head the wrong way.
The department's saying 12, so between 8 and 12 weeks. But we do that for multiple commodities, for multiple things, so it's not like this is something special. It's something we can do. Again, what we try to do is balance, and the balance here was the experience we had with the bid process 2 years ago. There was one vendor, the local vendor, that chose 2 years ago not to participate. We had a purchasing contract that we are eligible to use through U.S. Communities that had pricing comparable to the pricing we currently had with a local, in our opinion, a vendor that's based here, that operates here in Evanston, and that's why we came forward with the recommendation that we did.
Alderman Rainey?
But to get this to use the national bid, did we not have to put together specs so that we know what, I mean, was there no transaction? Was it pick up the phone, okay, yeah, we'll take it? I mean, there was no time involved?
There is no transaction, because what happens is the entity that makes the bid, in this case, it's Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, they have already gone through that process. So we basically use their spec with the commodities that they bid and the dollars.
So you're not recreating the wheel. We have the specs. We know exactly what we need. The point is, we didn't even get pricing from anybody else this year, which you indicated was our policy when we go to these national or municipal conference bids, purchases. We have something to go by to know if those are the better prices.
And in this instance, this contract, it was the decision of the operating department, since that contract was available and the pricing was comparable to the pricing that we had, to move forward with that. It is a policy judgment of the city council to determine if that was a correct decision or not. And if the council believes that was an incorrect decision, we will be happy to take additional direction and come back to you at a future meeting.
Sometimes spending public money it just, takes a little longer. I've always said that, and, I mean, the vetting that people are going through right now with some of this economic development spending, it's incredible. And I think to do a quickie to make this purchase, I just think that is bad policy. And when you have a vendor locally who wasn't even given an opportunity, when you have an alderman who asked at least several times about when is this going to be rebid, then I just think that it seemed like a quickie purchase, and I wish it hadn't happened.
And it hasn't happened.
I would have absolutely not one word to say if you said, hey, we called up North Suburban and they said they blew us off and didn't want to deal with us.
I think our challenge is we rarely go to one particular city vendor to do that. We would go out, and this is one of those instances where there is one vendor that we're aware of that's able to fulfill this. Again, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I think your options are to approve this, deny this, or send it back to staff and ask us to go through a local vetting as we have done previously. And we'll be happy to follow the committee's direction.
Alderman Grover?
Could we just do some comparative pricing on this one?
Absolutely.
And do we have enough time to do that? And in the meantime, then, put it back on an agenda to examine the policy and what we would do in the future? So on this particular one, we could do some comparative pricing and see if we reach the same conclusion?
We certainly could.
Alderman Rainey?
When we do that, so that it's fair, so that it's apples to apples, could we say to what other vendor we go to locally, or even Lincoln Woodskokie, keeping it, that this could mean a contract? So give us your best price, not call up and say, what do you pay? What do you?
I mean, I think that only becomes difficult because that, the idea behind a bid process is that you are leveling a playing field and you ask businesses to, at the same time, give you that level bid. Now, we're happy to give.
Then you ought to give them the specs and let them bid, like.
Well, then that's beyond, Madam Chair, Alderman Grover, just calling up and getting prices. I mean, if you'd like us to have a full formal bid process, we're happy to do
You're making
that.
it impossible to be fair here. That's what you're doing. And I'm going to back off this, but I think it's a very unfortunate situation, given everybody's talking about prices, and we're not giving a look. I mean, if this was just a national bid and we didn't have anybody else around, I'd say, oh well, let's take that bid. But we had somebody else here. We had somebody else. And they were aced out, and that's what I'm upset about.
And Alderman Rainey, members of the committee.
We have a motion on the table and a second.
You mean on the floor?
On the floor, I'm sorry. Apologize. Do we have an alternate motion, or are we ready to vote on this?
What is the motion?
The motion is to approve A 3.4, for the contract. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
A 3.5, staff recommends City Council approval for the rental of scaffolding from Gilco Scaffolding Company, LLC, for pedestrian safety purposes during the inspection of the Sherman parking garage facade. Total estimated cost are $31,672 for installation and removal. Funding will be provided from the parking fund, which has an $800,000 budget in the 2012 Capital Improvements Program.
Second.
Any questions?
I have a
Alderman
question.
Rainey?
Yes, I'd like to know how much time it took to get these numbers, and what was the bidding process on this? And yes, I did read my packet.
Do we have anyone to speak to this?
Good
Thank you,
evening,
Mr.
Marty
Lyons.
Lyons, Assistant City Manager, members of the committee, Madam Chair. We are, excuse me, the Sherman parking garage, that was an emergency purchase when we first set it up, so we did not do that much, didn't have that much time in getting pricing for this. I don't have the backup with me, but I can have it by the time we go to council.
That was
Alderman
exactly my reason for asking, because it was an emergency purchase. But still, the person responsible took the time to go out and get information from at least 3 vendors, at least 3. And that was extremely impressive, that even though it's an emergency purchase, we still did some due diligence on this. And very, very interesting.
Mr. Lyons, do you have a response?
All I'm
Just
asking for
as on page 127, we did have the pricing listed. The amount of staff time was probably just a few hours as far as putting it together, and it took about a week to get the responses, or a little bit less, according to Mr. Gaynor.
I appreciate the effort made on this.
question.
Alderman Grover?
According to the memo, the total estimated costs for scaffolding by Gilco is $31,672, which includes installation and removal, but does not include the monthly rental.
It included some portion of the rental.
The first month, I think
Right.
the first
So,
month maybe,
and it's
but not.
approximately, and we do anticipate, not going to say that it's only going to be 3 months. Depending on what is found by Wish-Janney, that scaffolding could easily be up until the end of the summer.
Okay, so the costs include this contract, but also the monthly fees for the scaffolding after the first month.
It was, Doug's checking right now. No, they couldn't estimate. It's really up to us. I think we put in a per-month fee for the actual pricing, and that was $2,300 a month?
$1,150 after the first.
Right.
Sorry. On page 125, it's $1,640 every 28 days.
After the
Right.
first 28. All right.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A 3.6, staff recommends the city council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the 2012 cured-in-place pipe lining contract A with American Pipeliners Incorporated in the amount of $362,408. Funding will be provided by the Sewer Fund, Capital Improvement Account 7420.62461, with an allocation of $250,000 for this type of sewer rehabilitation work.
Move approval.
All those in favor? Aye. A 3.7, staff recommends the city council authorize the city manager to execute a one-year extension of the agreement to provide engineering services associated with wholesale water sales in the not-to-exceed amount of $100,000. Funding will be provided from the Water Fund, account 7125.6218. This account has a fiscal year 2012 allocation of $100,000 for these services.
Move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. A4, approval, staff recommends City Council approval of the estimated annual user charge for 2012 with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago for disposal of sludge generated as part of the water treatment process in the amount of $304,119.65. Funding will be provided from the Water Fund account 7110.62420 with a budget of $458,000. Alderman Grover.
All I can say is this is a bummer. This unanticipated expense. Storms in Lake Michigan that cause additional turbidity and.
Yes, and actually that's from 2011.
Yeah.
So the MWRD did remain with the price that we had previously for 2012. But again, it will be based on the turbidity in the lake.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Thanks.
Alderman Rainey.
I think people watching might not know what we're talking about. People might know that we have over $300,000 a year that we pay to the district for sludge removal, but they might not understand that last year was 700 and some thousand because of, would you explain that?
Last summer, there were several violent storms in this area, which caused the turbidity or cloudiness of the lake water to be extremely high. Record high turbidities were recorded at the water plant. And to remove the particles that were in the lake water, we add chemicals to it. So removing all that turbidity falls into a sludge, which we then discharge to the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Normally, we have expenses somewhere around $300,000 to $350,000, but due to the amount of turbidity and thus the sludge created last year, in 2011, our total costs were $793,000. We had paid to $300,000 during the course of the year, and we have a true-up cost of $458,000 approximately. In 2012, our estimated costs are again $300,000. So during 2012, we'll be paying the amount that we were short last year, $483,000, plus the $300,000 for 2012. So we're going to have expenditures over $700,000 this year in sludge disposal costs.
No more questions? All those in favor? Aye. A5, staff recommends City Council approval of the modification to the 2012 CIP to resurface additional streets in the amount of $1 million and to replace power centers in the amount of $250,000. Funding will be provided by the General Fund Reserve. Any questions? I have questions. I'm not sure where Ms. Robinson went. Mr. Popkowitz. My question is, as looking through this list, I noticed that Oakton is not on here. We've talked a lot about paving Oakton. We actually have no new streets in the 9th Ward, and under the CIP, we had only Madison, and I believe, Ms. Robinson, you had mentioned something about Elmwood, and I'm just wondering why Oakton, after so much discussion about Oakton, that we didn't include that anywhere.
We had a number of streets for consideration, Oakton being one of them. We also received complaints about the condition of several other streets, and we went out and we did a survey of all of those, including Oakton, was included in our survey. Oakton was in better shape than all of the streets except one that's on the list, which I think it had an equivalent rating. And that rating was based on, a surface evaluation. And of course, we can't really see subsurface. That's what the pavement evaluation would be. So we have $1 million. Can
I also ask, so when looking at these streets, the only one that may even come close to having similar traffic is, oh no, not even Asbury, where that part of Asbury is. None of these other streets have the amount of traffic that Oakton does, or has been such a controversy.
As I mentioned before, the condition of those streets, while they may not have been discussed in council, we have received complaints from residents.
But what is the difference in the travel amount on cars going down these streets versus going down Oakton on a daily basis, and the amount of truck traffic as well on these streets versus Oakton? I just find it really actually baffling that after as much as we've talked about thoroughfare streets with the many issues along Oakton, that you made a choice, and I'm not sure if any of the other aldermen were spoken with about these choices, or if this was a arbitrary decision on the part of your office. I just don't know, but it's very disconcerting for me.
Well, let me be the target of your disconcerting feelings, Alderman. It's my idea to come to the council with $1 million for additional streets. This is not part of the CIP. I feel that the need is great. We have money in the reserves. So I turned to the Public Works Director and I said, come up with a list of the streets that you feel are the worst shape on the list. What she chose to do was to go and do an additional review. We looked at it purely on pavement condition. That was the only requirement that I gave to the Public Works Director, no other requirement. If the City Council would like to make other adjustments to this list, that's great. There's lots of streets in Evanston. $1 million, unfortunately, doesn't go very far. And so I look to the council. We've had no conversations. I've had no conversations with anyone individually about these streets. I think many of you know this was coming. I think we had mentioned it at the budget report a couple weeks ago. But really the measure was, what are the next worst streets on the list? And if the council would wish to make other criteria, that's up to the City Council.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, Madam Chairman, I have streets in my ward that are far worse than Oakton, but what I want to know is, and they're not getting paved, by the way, what I want to know is, what is the rating we've given Oakton? Because I went up and down it several times after seeing this, and it doesn't seem that bad. The problem with Oakton are the patches.
Right. Oakton was given a rating of 3, which is equivalent to the Hartree rating in the memo. And the other thing that, we also had to take into account, in order for us to resurface the additional streets and get them done this year, they have to quite honestly be simple grind repaving, the scenarios. Oakton would not be that type of job, and would potentially require subsurface work as well. So we also looked at the design and engineering. The ease of all of that played a role in making that selection. So the two options that we had in terms of the two separate segments of Oakton, one was $1.2 million between, and then the other one was $800,000, I believe. Yes. Ridge to Custer was $800,000, and Dodge to Ridge was $1.2 million.
But I'm not saying that these streets aren't a problem. That's not my beef here. My beef is that these streets, what are the speed limits on these streets, and how much traffic are going down these streets is my issue. So, and overall, I'd like to see, what does that map look like for resurfacing this year? I still don't, you said that we added another one on Elmwood in the 9th Ward. I'm not sure that I've seen that. So I'd like to see an overall map of the plans for paving. It's just, yes, it's an overall city issue, and we should look at infrastructure at citywide, but when you have clearly certain areas of the community being paved and certain areas not, that raises some questions. Once again, particularly when we're talking about heavy traffic patterns. There's no, Ward 5's not on here, Ward 3's not on here, Ward 9's not on here. Alderman Holmes.
If I remember correctly, the discussions, as I'm looking at this is additional for 2012. Did we not talk about Oakton for next year, for 2013 in capital improvement?
Only as looking at the 5-year capital improvement plan of possibly putting that in the capital improvement, but there was nothing, when we're looking at, we've basically found money.
No, I understand that, but again, it wouldn't even cover, well, it wouldn't cover the one part where we had the most complaints, which is between Dodge and Ridge, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Alderman Grover?
Oh, no, I was going to point out about the Elmwood the scenario that we presented that to council at the last meeting. It was a part of the modification to the 2012 CIP program.
Elmwood,
and it was Elmwood, Oakton to South Boulevard.
Okay. That's one block, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, that's a water main replacement and resurfacing of that street.
Okay. Alderman Grover?
What we prepared for you two, I'm sorry. We have a handout that looks at the resurfacing from 2010 to 2012, and it also includes the original 2012 CIP. And you're correct, the Fifth Ward is not included, but the Fifth Ward has Dodge Avenue, which is a part of the original CIP, and in addition, last year received several improvements, and if I recall from the original 2012 CIP, the 8th Ward didn't have any streets at all until these additional streets were added as a result of the. So what we try to do is we don't balance just within the existing year. We also we try to balance across years too. We also look at, so we take everything into consideration, including the input that we receive from council when we establish what we're going to do each year. We got an additional $1 million, and where could we get the most impact? So we went out and looked based on citizen complaint, the locations that were submitted to us by staff, and I think, and then we went out and looked at those locations and drove around, and that's how we came up with the list. And there's more out there. There's substantially more out there that needs attention, but the $1 million in trying to make the most impact is really what we were trying to do.
Alderman Grover?
Yeah, I really appreciate using the reserves to do this kind of more comprehensive street resurfacing project. It'll improve the quality of life for many residents, and I agree that we ought to see it as a community-wide effort and focus rather than thinking and think what are the worst streets in Evanston and not what's the worst street in every ward, because we're looking more comprehensively at improving all the streets together. Do we take into consideration other things besides speed, amount of traffic, and the smoothness of the ride on our streets when you're considering which streets to resurface? There are some safety liability issues, aren't there, in a badly paved or a street that's in terrible disrepair?
Right, and I'll use Highland as a perfect example of, and that's an original street.
Explain where Highland is.
Highland is between Isabella and...
North of Central.
It's north of Central, but it butts up against Isabella and a greenhouse, and Thayer, between Thayer and Isabella, in the far northwest corner of the city.
I think it's one of our last dirt roads.
And that's exactly what my point is. And the residents would prefer that, we don't really need to pave this. Some residents have made that, but there's a situation, and we have an unpaved street in Evanston, and right now it's a two-way street that really should not be. So we have to address the situation and look at it from a traffic and safety standpoint, and do what's best for the city. So when we looked at that too, so like I said, this was just a surface review, and the streets that we have listed have a tremendous amount of.
Can I clarify again?
Yes.
Because I did ask if you took into account the number of cars, and you did not take the number of cars or the speed. You just took into account the road surface. So the car and speed was not included in their account. It was only the surface. So
that's correct.
I just wanted to make that very clear that you did not contact any aldermen to talk to them about the choice on the surfaces.
Well, the way I
that's
see
what
it,
I just need to know. I wanted that very clear. Thank you.
The question, from what I understand, is the actual condition of the road, not necessarily its use. If you've got a road in terrible disrepair, and we repair and maintain our roads.
This is our recommendation.
I do like the idea of a comprehensive map that shows us all the resurfacing projects for 2012. That would be great.
Okay, and what I wanted to say, Alderman, the additional streets that we have identified here, this is the standard protocol that we have when we bring the resurfacing list, and if there are other streets or issues that you feel warrant more attention, we do try to make those adjustments.
I'm not sure that I could bring more attention to where I want paving done. So I think you brought it to your attention.
Yes.
And that's why your concern needs to be addressed to me, Alderman Burris, because the Director of Public Works was following my direction. And
Right,
my direction was not to...
And she said it needs to be brought to her attention. I'm not sure that I could bring Oakton to anyone's attention more than I have.
Absolutely, but she was following my direction in preparing the list.
And I am showing my displeasure in that the aldermen were not contacted, and my displeasure in that Oakton has been a huge problem, and so I am not pleased with how this has come about,
Great.
is my point.
So don't be...
We have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. A6, staff recommends City Council approval of 2012 fleet purchasing plan, which includes the 2012 equipment replacement proposal in the amount of $2.4 million, the 2012 additional equipment replacement proposal in the amount of $1.1 million, and the 2013 equipment specification and bid plan. Funding for this plan will be from the Fleet Fund in the amount of $2.4 million, Fleet Fund Reserve in the amount of $600,000, and the General Fund Reserve in the amount of $500,000. Move approval. Second. Alderman Rainey.
We have a fleet fund. I don't know who I'm talking to. Let's see. Who should I talk to? Marty, maybe? We have a fleet fund, and the way we pay for our new vehicles is by chargebacks to the various departments that use those vehicles. Is that right?
In theory, yes.
Do we vary from that theory other than from taking $500,000 in reserves from the general fund for this purchase? I'm voting against this, and I just find this very difficult to swallow.
And Alderman Rainey, members of the committee, this is another one of those issues I brought before you this evening. We have done a poor job of managing our fleet as far as putting money aside in order to have it to replace our vehicles. We have not put aside the money that we need to over a period of time to replace vehicles at the natural end of their life. And I'm proposing this is a $1.75 million package. The first item you've considered this evening was $1 million for streets and $250,000 for power centers for streetlights. This is the third component, an additional $500,000 to help replace vehicles that have not been replaced because we as a city have not done a good enough job of putting that money aside for replacement over time. So when it's come time for replacement, we've not been able to replace all those vehicles that are needed on an annual basis.
Well, Madam Chairman, I'd like to hold this until we see what the budget looks like for chargebacks to the various funds for the fleet fund, because in reviewing the budget, it appeared as though we were doing exactly the job we were being requested to do in reserving that money, and I don't know what you're talking about. Where did we fall short? I think instead of just a speech about we haven't done a good job and therefore we need to, dig into our reserve in addition to using, how many, 2.4 million, how much is coming from the fleet fund? Whatever, several million from the fleet fund. I'd like to know a little more about that.
Certainly.
I don't see that. And where have we gone wrong, and why have we gone wrong, and who's been watching the store? I mean, I don't understand that.
Mr. Bobkutz, can we have a report at our next APW meeting? Are there a problem with holding this until the next meeting?
The only question would be perhaps we need
it's
to
next
hold
week.
it
Yes,
for
week.
2 meetings because we've got one. It's the next Monday. I think
Next
perhaps
Monday.
it would make sense to hold to the first meeting in April, which would be April the 9th.
Okay, and is that a problem with any?
I understood it was April 10th for some reason.
April 10th, it's a Tuesday.
We haven't bought anything. I mean, so it's not a problem. What I really want to, I'd really like everybody to have a full understanding of the fleet fund and where we failed.
Okay.
We would welcome the opportunity to do that.
So we'll bring it back on April 10th?
That's fine.
Great, thank you. A7, Alderman Holmes, sorry about that.
Mr. Bobowitz, in terms of the green initiative, would some of these costs be increased because we are now trying to purchase green vehicles? I mean, as I looked at it, was my impression, unless I'm reading it wrong.
What we're trying to do is minimize those costs. I don't believe the staff report has a particular dollar amount for green. But what we've tried to do is be smart again with the vehicles that make the most sense for us and to be mindful of the additional costs. So yes, the short answer to your question is yes, it does cost a little bit more up front. Some of that is recaptured over time through fuel savings and whatnot. But yes, there is a little bit of an increment. And that's an issue that Alderman Burris and others on the council have had quite a bit. And so we were trying to be mindful of that and again balance the environment as well as the costs associated.
I understand that, but I just wanted to make sure that I was reading that correctly because I do know it's more expensive.
Any other questions? Yes. A7, staff recommends that the City Council approve Resolution 7-R-12, which authorizes the city manager to execute a 20-year easement agreement with SunS LLC for the installation of dark fiber optic cable on public property at the alleyway south of Davis and east of Orrington Avenue for a fee of $2,015.
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A8, staff recommends that the City Council approve Resolution 13-R-12, which authorizes the city manager to execute an easement agreement with Evanston Venture Partners, LLC, in the city's right-of-way adjacent to the property commonly known as 1717 Ridge Avenue for the installation of tie-back rods and earth retention materials for a fee of $3,050.
Move approval.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
A9, staff recommends that the City Council approve.
I'm sorry, may
I'm sorry,
I just
Alderman
ask
Ray.
a question?
I apologize, I didn't see it.
About the previous item, the dark fiber optic cable. It said in various locations. Who is that for? Could we get any information about that? I had a note to ask the question, and I didn't. Yeah, it was just. But it doesn't say. I just wanted to know. I mean.
Good evening. Satnagar, senior engineer. This is last year Synesis came in and they did connect several buildings in the city. This is one of the sections that was left south of Davis. So this is going to 1603 Orrington building.
Okay, what is 1603 Orrington?
This is to provide the data information into the building. There's an office complex and they're providing the services to that.
Oh, Davis and Orrington? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
Is that where it is?
Yep, that's correct.
All right, I just didn't click with me.
Okay. Did we get the vote on A8? No. Yes? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just didn't see it. A9, staff recommends that the City Council approve Resolution 21-R-12, which designates room 2200 in the Lorraine H. Morton Civic Center as the Fleetwood Jourdain Art Guild Meeting Room. The room will serve as a gallery and meeting room.
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
A10, staff recommends that City Council approve Ordinance 32-0-12, authorizing the city manager to execute an assignment of a real estate contract for the purchase of real property at 1223 to 1225 Chicago Avenue in Evanston, the acquisition of the property at 1223, 1225 Chicago Avenue is recommended to support the parking needs at the new Trader Joe's development at 1211 Chicago Avenue. Alderman Rainey?
Madam Chairman, I understand that were this to go forward, the, what is it, Tenneco or some, that developer would manage the lot, right? What I want to know, who's going to do the construction of developing the parking lot?
Madam Chair, Alderman Rainey, we will be coming back to you with another agreement with Terrico that would outline their responsibilities for doing that.
Yeah, but you're asking us to buy something to make a parking lot, and I want to be really helpful, but don't we need more information? For example, somebody asked me today, well, if you're buying that property, then how long is the lease that Trader Joe has signed with the developer? Do we know that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how long?
I believe in
100
25
years?
years.
I hope?
25 years.
25 years. That's long enough. Okay. Then there was this whole controversy about, and I must be behind in this study, but there was a controversy about the president of Northwestern being upset because we didn't say how much involved he was. And then I thought I heard that they own the property, and then I see that there's another owner of the property. Could you just clarify that
Certainly,
for me?
and this is really the first
understand.
opportunity that we've had to come before the City Council and talk about the Trader Joe's deal outside of the announcement that was made several weeks ago.
But this is what I want to know about.
And so there are really three parcels involved in this project. There is the parcel that the current former Blockbuster Video is on, and that parcel has been purchased by the developer Terrico. There is this parcel which we're talking about this evening, which is the 1223, 1225 Chicago Avenue parcel. Currently has a tanning salon and a former restaurant. That is a second piece. A third piece for this project is the parcel immediately to the north of that, and that address is 1227 Chicago Avenue. There's a single-family home on that site, and that property is owned by Northwestern University.
Wait, who owns this property that we're talking about tonight?
It is a private owner. The name is in the contract
Right.
agreements.
Okay, that's,
But it's
just
not
confused.
Northwestern University.
Fabulous.
It's
I was slightly confused about.
Gendel Realty Partners, Inc.
But this is the only property we're concerned about, right? We have no issues with any of, this is our only responsibility, this property.
We anticipate that we will be involved in the purchase of the second property, which is currently owned by Northwestern University.
That we would actually buy Northwestern's property?
We are in negotiations. The developer Terrico is in negotiations with Northwestern on that third piece of
Oh,
property.
they're in but not us.
We are not in negotiations, but we may also be asked, we anticipate to be asked to have a similar assignment agreement where the city would purchase that property once a negotiation is concluded. A negotiation is not concluded on that property. We anticipate that it will be, and we anticipate that the city of Evanston will be involved in the purchase of that property. That's correct.
And could you explain why we're singling this property out now to deal with when none of those other pieces have been tied up?
The Blockbuster site has been purchased by Terrico, so that is
But that's not enough. I mean, that's not enough, is it, to bring this project to fruition?
That's correct.
Okay, so
So it's this property, and then it's the property next door.
what is our potential cost for the property next door?
That is still under negotiation with Northwestern University. It's a smaller property, so I would imagine
Less than
it
$1
will
million?
It'll be something less than $1 million, yes.
And that would be a parking lot also?
That is what's anticipated, yes.
How much parking is on the parcel purchased by Terrico?
My understanding is that they will not use any of the existing parking, that will all be used by a building.
Okay, all right.
The vast majority of it will be used by a building.
And
The numbers aren't working out for me here.
Okay.
Well, not everyone knows, but I was not in the executive session talking about this because of
Certainly.
because I work at Northwestern, so I was not in. So this is all, usually I'm behind the scenes and knowing about. I'm not sure how this number works out with 1.4 million for this property and then a possible another 600,000 for
Something less than $1 million. The negotiations are not completed.
Right. Okay. So let's just say 2 million, just to make a nice round number. How do we back out of that? I mean, how do we look at the numbers of we're putting in 2 million? How long before we recoup that in property taxes and sales tax, even building permits? Parking. So I just need to know those numbers. Thanks.
Sure. The sales tax and alcohol tax is estimated to be somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a year generated by that property. Again, this is not a property that would be sold to the developer. This is a property that would be retained by the City of Evanston as parking fund. We have fund balance available to do that. We're currently generating about 0.75% return on that money. So we look at this as an opportunity not only however the council might want to structure it, but over a few years with just the sales and alcohol tax, we also anticipate to make some of the parking available for permit parking in the neighborhood. So we would also anticipate that there would be revenue coming back with that. As we looked at this project, and again, this is really the first opportunity publicly we're having to talk about the details of this, we first looked back at to what was originally contemplated for the first time a Trader Joe's was coming to town, and that was a combination of a sales tax rebate as well as money from a anticipated TIF in that area. And that dollar amount was roughly valued at $2 million. We felt in discussions with Terrico that rather than gifting them money, if there was an opportunity for the city to buy property for parking, that was an investment on the city's part. As you well know, we've done that previously in other parts of the community, the large structures that we have in the downtown, the small lot that we have off of Main Street. So it's not a new thing for the city to purchase property for parking. So we felt that rather than gifting money to this project, either through a rebate or TIF or some other way, that purchasing parking for the project made sense. With the sequence of events here, the project, this parcel we're talking about, 1223, 1225, is under contract. The developer is looking to move forward with the purchase of that. The remaining parcel with Northwestern, there's an agreement has not been made for the purchase of that property. Our hope was to come back to the council soon over the next several weeks with that agreement plus an agreement for the use of both parcels for a parking lot with Trader Joe's.
Did we discuss at all with Trader Joe's the notion of doing a sales tax rebate instead of putting out $2 million approximately just all at one time? It seems to make more sense from our perspective to do it over a period of time versus $2 million outlay.
We didn't largely because of the idea of holding the asset. That rather than gift money to be able to have property, it's an area that is already parking impacted. So early on in the discussions, it made sense to focus on the purchase of the property by the parking fund for parking.
But it's primarily parking for Trader Joe's.
Primarily during the day, we think, in talking with Alderman Nguyen, that there are opportunities other parts of the day and overnight that will be helpful. There's also private businesses in the area, which we believe we'll be able to contract with for parking in the evening hours.
Alderman Grover.
And because the parking lot will be used for primarily commercial purpose, it does not come off the tax rolls. That is, we will not be granting an exemption to Trader Joe's or to the city for payment of the property taxes. Trader Joe's will be picking up property tax payments for this parcel. Am I right?
There would continue to be property tax paid, yes. And the property that's currently owned by Northwestern University is paying property tax.
Question on the property tax. When we knock down the improvement on that lot, what will that impact to that property tax be? What they're currently paying, and then it becomes a vacant lot. Won't that be substantially lower?
It will definitely change. I don't know that we have the number calculated. Johanna Neiden's here. She may wish to add some additional items.
Alderman Rainey, do you want to ask?
Add to that? Yeah. Will the parking be assessed as part of the Trader Joe parcel for tax purposes, or will it be assessed separately?
Well, I'm not the assessor, and I don't want to make too many assumptions as to how they might assess the property. The way we looked at it is this was one property as a whole. So right now you have a vacant commercial building on that block, in that 1211 Chicago Avenue, and the net impact of taking down that building and turning the remainder of the buildings to the north into parking would yield a higher property tax generation for all the taxing bodies.
So will we give Trader Joe's a land lease for that? I just want to know how it is that they're going to pay taxes on that lot.
I think it'll be a license agreement, and there'll be stipulations within that agreement.
So we don't have that worked out yet.
We are waiting to see if the second or third, the northwestern parcel, how that figures into the project.
Alderman Rainey?
I'm just behind on this. What about the northwestern parcel? Does somebody live there?
Yes.
And what is their situation? I mean, are they involved in any of this? Or are they just going to be?
Discussions are ongoing between the current tenant of that property, Northwestern, and Terrico.
And a follow-up, the house on that lot, is that a historic house? Do we need to move that house? Can that house be torn down? What does that look like?
It can be torn down. We are looking to move it.
So on top of helping to purchase the property, would the city then be responsible for moving the house? And do we have an idea of where we would move that house and how much that would cost?
In our negotiations with Terrico, we have indicated that that would be their requirement to move the house and all costs associated with that.
Okay.
I think we could really say nice things about Northwestern if they just gave the property.
And we have tried that.
I can't believe we're talking about buying.
I think we've asked.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Yes, on the floor, not on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm opposed. Okay, on to A11. The local liquor commissioner recommends adoption of ordinance 29-0-12, increasing the number of Class C liquor licenses from 27 to 28 to permit issuance to Sandcalp and Shanty LLC, doing business as Mount Everest Restaurant, 630 Church Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A12, the local liquor commissioner recommends adoption of ordinance 30-0-12, which amends subsection 3-5-6 AA of the Evanston City Code of 1979 as amended to permit service of alcohol liquor for immediate consumption.
Move approval.
Alderman Rainey?
I really don't understand this. Could we just get a real clarification of the phrase immediate consumption? I just don't understand why that's in there. And
Mr. Farrar, is that you?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Grant Farrar, Corporation Counsel. With respect to that phraseology, I believe that was something that was in the memo itself. It was a subject of discussion. It doesn't necessarily reflect in the ordinance. Essentially, my understanding of the discussion at the Liquor Board hearing on this application was that there are some tastings that Mr. Doolin does, and there's also some of wine and beer, but the liquor is not subject to the tasting. Because that is a different part of the regulation under city code and also state code. So that's just, essentially that was to clarify that the immediate consumption would not be of alcoholic liquor.
didn't clarify for me. I don't understand. So everything is the same, except for the fact that there's going to be spirits in addition to beer and wine. Is that the difference?
Correct.
Do you have any other questions?
Just,
Alderman, do you have your questions answered?
I guess, I don't know. I just don't understand. I mean, I think we ought to make, especially our liquor issues, as clear as possible, because we've got one on here tonight that isn't that clear.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Support.
A13, sorry. Yeah, A13, sorry about that. The local liquor commissioner recommends adoption of ordinance 31-0-12, which amends subsection 3-5-6 AC of the Evanston City Code of 1979 as amended to permit consumption of alcoholic beverages purchased on site in all viewing auditoriums. Alderman Rainey?
I think we ought to clarify in the information, the documents that we received, it is much more specific than in all viewing auditoriums. It is, from what I recall, 800-seat auditorium. Did I not read that? I mean, it's specifically for Century Theaters.
Correct.
Right.
Correct, yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Grant for our Corporation Counsel. This is an expansion based upon what information the licensee has brought to us. They want to expand from the 6 arts cinemas to the 12 non-arts cinemas. Obviously, there's a difference in the organization of the theater, 12 on one side, 6 on another, so this would be all 18.
But from reading, the point I was trying to make, from reading this, you would think if you have an auditorium, then you can apply for this license and viewing auditorium, and that's not quite true. So it's just a clarification, right? Right? I mean, not all
Yes.
auditoriums can apply for this license.
Correct.
Do you have any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A14, the local liquor commissioner recommends adoption of ordinance 23-0-12, increasing the number of Class B liquor licenses from 16 to 17 to permit issuance to Evanston Pub, doing business as World of Beer at 1601 Sherman Avenue. This item was introduced at the February 27, 2012 City Council meeting and will be considered at this meeting, March 19, 2012.
Move approval.
Can I get a second? Alderman Rainey?
I thought there was some request by the part of the committee for additional information on this.
Mr. Farrar?
Well, let me just finish
okay.
why I'm asking for it. It's pretty clear that a Class B is for hotels and restaurants. I mean, that's what it's for. And this is not a hotel or a restaurant. And there is a statement in the applicant's paperwork saying, I will not be providing food, but I will be providing menus, and people can call up, Jimmy John's and get a sandwich. That was never the intent of the ordinance. So what can we do about that?
Yes, members of the committee, Alderman Rainey, Grant for our Corporation Counsel. Responsive to that request, I have spoken with Mr. Mavrakis, and he has given me some information. First, I'd like to just approach the dais, hand out what I received this afternoon, and then I can explain further.
We can pass them down. You sure? Okay.
No worries.
All right.
Is it a menu?
Did you say it's in a menu? Hungry?
In the time that's elapsed since the last meeting, the law department has done some due diligence with Mr. Mavrakis. What we asked him to do, following an original request I made of him of the original meeting that was held on this matter before the Liquor Hearing Board, was to provide some agreements to lay out, to delineate what the operational approach would be with respect to the service of food. So what Mr. Mavrakis gave me today were menus from 7 local establishments plus the agreements from 7 local establishments that indicate that food would be offered at all hours that the place was going to be open. With respect to just the agreements themselves, this does address in part the concerns expressed by the committee. The problem is the way that the liquor code is written right now, that the definition of a restaurant and the conditions of a Class B license are in somewhat of conflict. Restaurants, typically, you have a working kitchen, you have an infrastructure, you have capital cost, you have employees in a kitchen. So the definition of a restaurant as applied to this prospective application is not necessarily on all fours. However, responsive to some of the comments and some of the concerns expressed, what I asked Mr. Mavrakis to do was to present his operational plan here tonight. He's in the audience. I mean, I'm going to defer to him because it's his scope of service, his scope of business. But what he did do is he provided these agreements that indicated food would be available. Really, whether the council still considers that food service being proffered and the agreement as is before you is whether that conforms to what your idea of a restaurant is for purposes of a Class B license. That's a policy determination. That's the purview of the council. Having said that, we did try to see where Class B could possibly work, and this is what the proposed licensee gave us today.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Mr. Farr. We don't have a bar license, do we? Any kind of liquor license just for a bar defined under our code as a counter upon or over which alcoholic liquor is the principal commodity served for consumption by persons at such counter.
You are correct. There is no such.
But even that doesn't apply to beer. That's alcoholic liquor.
There is no such classification in the city code as of now.
And I keep going back to the definition of restaurant in our code, and this one doesn't fit the definition of restaurant, and the Class B should be granted only for restaurants.
Or hotels.
Or hotels within the core area. No question this is in the core area, but I don't think there's any question that it's not a restaurant or a hotel. I'd be willing to entertain a new liquor license for a bar. But I'm really uncomfortable trying to pigeonhole this one into our definition of a Class B liquor license.
I have a question.
Alderman Holmes?
I would certainly second that, Alderman Grover. However, let me ask this question. Would then he be able to still have this kind of agreement with other restaurants if they wanted to have food? Maybe some people would like to have food with at the bar and not have to have it provided by the bar.
Well, I think that's possible, yes. I mean, and I certainly wouldn't want to foreclose an applicant, utilizing their ways of developing a business model that could fit into a possible new definition, if that is the guidance that is received from council tonight, to create a new definition in the code.
I just think it's a very creative way to do it, and so.
Alderman Rainey?
It's creative, but I don't quite understand. I got the part about having the menus available, and then the server would call up and get you a pizza or whatever. But this appears as though there's going to actually be food in the pub.
Correct.
Yeah. Waiting to be eaten. I think that raises a health department issue, and I'd like to know how that's going to be addressed. And I don't know if Yvanda's here tonight, because how is that food? I mean, we're doing everything but having, is it going to be refrigerated? Is it going to be heated? And if they're going to go through all that.
When you say, Alderman Rainey, when you said it's going to be sitting there waiting, I thought they still had to order.
No, it looks to me, it says.
No, as a point of clarification, in terms of what may have been discussed previously, the concept of a one-person ordering food, that was clearly untenable under the code's definition of a restaurant. So then, there was some interpretation and some thought that I gave to, well, if there's continuous food service, and that seemed to be what I understood was going to be contemplated when the applicant came before the liquor board. So then, we worked with the applicant to see if food was going to be there on an ongoing basis. But having said that, obviously there is some implementation issues and some logistical issues which both, at some point the health department would have to be involved with, but really, the applicant would have to explain, how he would be prepared and willing and capable of conforming to health requirements and codes in that vein.
Yeah, because it says C, Lulu's agrees to have its food items at World of Beer during its hours of operation. So I'm assuming the food would be there, ready for people to order it. And then at the end of the week, World of Beer settles up with the expenses with Lulu's. This isn't where you call up Lulu's and Lulu's promises to deliver it. They're going to have the food
and
there.
that was the way I was reading it, in terms of to have it there at. I didn't think you could walk in and the food would be laying there.
That sounds like that's what it is.
Well, that was not the, and that was not the presentation that we had before, so.
Oh,
I
this
was
is new.
simply-
Yeah. This is
And I know
new.
this is new, but I still was looking at it in terms of that kind of service being available.
Like,
so-
I think if we did a new license, I would have no problem with menus being there and people, if people wanted to be inconvenienced by calling up and getting food, so be it. But this is a little, this is just going a little too far, I think, to meet this is still not a restaurant.
What would the time frame be on putting together a new liquor classification for a bar?
I think I could have something drafted for April 10th in terms of just creating the classification itself. I guess for purposes of direction, I think it would be helpful for Mr. Mavrakis to indicate if he would be prepared to possibly defer going forward with his current application in lieu of a new classification being drafted and presented to the council for its approval.
Would you like to address the council, the committee?
Good evening. My name is Ted Mavrakis, and I'm the applicant for this application. What is the time granted?
Well, I could get something with respect to a new code amendment drafted before the council on April 10th, but just simply the fact that that would be acted upon first reading and then second reading through the end of April, it would still necessitate you doing a new application, I know, but simply we would have to create the new license so that your application could conform to a new license if it were approved by council. So it'd be similar to what you've already done in terms of the application process.
And Alderman Grover has a question.
My question is, should this go through the Liquor Commission, too?
Yes, it would have to also go
When does
through.
the Liquor Commission meet next?
Well,
Whenever they want, so.
yeah, it's at the call of the mayor.
The Liquor Commission's a pretty nimble group. We could get a recommendation from the Liquor Commission sometime before April 10th. In theory.
I can say that the Liquor Commission's docket is busy through April 10th with other matters. So I'm not necessarily sure as I sit here tonight what the scheduling could be in terms of getting it down the road on that particular body's agenda.
Alderman Rainey?
This is sort of urgent because they've already applied, so maybe they could be moved up to the top of the list. But I think that while we're talking about this, it might be important to suggest where this license ought to be available, a bar license. Do we want a bar license within the city limits of Evanston? Do we want it in the downtown core? How do we want to look at this? I mean, I know the Liquor Commission has to talk about it, but it is Administration of Public Works that creates ordinances, the liquor license ordinances. So, I mean could, well, we always start out with one.
I mean, the limit, we should limit it.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I think that would be part of the analysis. I think in terms of just drafting language itself, that's an easy thing to do. But the implementation of the language on a citywide spectrum, that is a policy-making decision that this committee and that the council would have to do. So in terms of the law department turning around the language, that's step one, and that's relatively easy. But the policy decision of where the license would be going in terms of eligibility in the city spectrum is a different issue for this committee.
Alderman Rainey, did you have a recommendation?
No, I think, though, that it should be discussed at some point.
Well, could we just make it in terms of
there would always have to be a special use? To be,
Alderman Holmes, could you speak into the mic just so we can hear?
I was really asking
Okay, I just couldn't hear.
I'm sorry. I was just asking, wouldn't we want to consider it, that it could always just be a special use, and then that way we could make it on each occasion?
I think we should start maybe in the downtown area.
Okay.
Like, I mean,
We want one over on
do
Hartree.
we want to give that direction to Mr. Farrar of?
Let me see if I can sum up for purposes of
Yes, that's
clarity.
right. I'm trying to get you direction here.
Yes.
We want this business, and we don't mind the model. It just doesn't fit into our.
Okay. Well, if I understand this committee correctly, we will go draft a bar license that, based upon the discussion tonight, would apply to the proposed licensee's application. I guess for purposes of housekeeping, if we wanted to postpone to a date certain this particular application pending Liquor Board review of the new license classification, this committee's review of the new license classification, and then tying that to the licensee's proposed application. So we would be looking at least through the month of April.
Do we also need any input from the Health Department before, so as not to have to come back again to discuss that? I saw Ms. Thomas come up, so I don't know.
Yes, we can work with the Health Department, and we will make that a component of the proposed licensees here.
Okay. Do you have any further comment?
I'm waiting for a guidance from you.
Okay.
We're going to make this work.
Basically, to sum up, what I'm hearing from the committee, although we obviously haven't made a vote, is we really believe that this does not fit into our categories, and legally we really couldn't vote to approve this under our current categories. So we are looking to find an alternative and come up with a different liquor license. Alderman Rainey?
I would suggest that as opposed to voting on this, that we simply hold it for a response from the Liquor Commission.
All right.
I'll smile this time.
Okay, so we're going to hold A14 in committee. Thank you, Mr. Farrar.
We're sending it back to the Liquor Commission.
Okay.
He knows.
He knows what to do.
Yes. Great. Items for discussion. We have one speaker, Mr. Bova. This is APW1, Pilot Bike Corral at Evanston Athletic Club.
And that's the subject of my comments. Carl Bova, 1322 Rosalie Street. And I'm in favor of the use of one or two parking stalls directly in front of EAC, provided that there is a 50-50 cost share with EAC to offset the lost parking revenue and to recover some of the setup and breakdown costs. And a 50-50 split of costs seems reasonable when you're looking at this as a pilot that might be applied at other locations throughout the city. Other nearby locations to this subject location appear to be too small or else in conflict with pedestrians or the alley traffic. And finally, unless bike stalls are placed directly at the destinations, bikers, by their nature, will continue to block sidewalks, which no one seems to want. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Good evening. As an update to the report on March 8th, we submitted a letter to the Evanston Athletic Club manager and asked her to pay or share in the cost of the bike corral and pay from the standpoint of the lost revenue, which we estimated to be $3,500 for the first year to cover 7 months of operation of the bike corral. And I am pleased to report that they agreed to pay half. So they agreed to pay $1,750. And I would like to proceed with the pilot if the committee so wishes.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, for following up on that. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we've come to what I believe is a win-win situation. Alderman Grover.
I was just going to move to adopt staff's recommendation for approval of a pilot bike corral on the east side of Benson Avenue in front of the Evanston Athletic Club.
I would second that, and thank you, Chairman, for making that suggestion.
You're welcome. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. You're up again, APW 250-50 alley paving ordinance.
I provided council with an additional discussion item. As you know, we presented a draft ordinance, and in response to that, we received several questions from AMPW, and so what I did was prepare a variety of options for the permeable versus the impermeable alley scenario. So in the memo on the second page, we took a look at, in 2008, we actually constructed the permeable pilot alley. And so I used those costs and compared them with the impermeable alley costs from that same year, and found that the cost to construct the permeable alley was actually 38% higher than our traditional impermeable alley. So in the table that's attached, I compared all the different scenarios I think the committee asked staff to consider. The top line addresses the impermeable, which is our current 50-50 alley. So considering that permeable alley that was built in 2008, that cost would be $175,000, and the city and residents' share would be just a little over $87,000 each. If that alley was a 50-50, on a 50-50 share basis was permeable, the city's cost would go up by $33,000, and the residents' cost would go up by $33,000. So $87,000 versus $121,000 for a permeable alley. We looked at the 40-60 scenario, which is what staff had proposed, which is the city would pay 40% and the resident would pay 60%. And so using that same green alley cost, the city share would go up $9,000 and the resident's share would go up by $57,000. We looked at the 40-60, the next option that we looked at was 40-60 with the 5% green cap. And what that means is that for any permeable alley, 5% of the total alley program would be dedicated towards the city's contribution to any green alley. So using that factor, the city's share would go up $60,000, and the residents' share would go up to $6,000. And then I think Alderman Burris asked us to look at the reverse of what we were proposing, which is 60-40, where the city would pay 60% for the permeable alley, and the city's cost would increase $57,000. And the residents' share would only increase $9,000. So before we look at developing or revising the ordinance, we really wanted to get some direction from the committee.
This is very helpful. Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
In reviewing this, I think I sent a memo to staff, at least an email to Wally. In reviewing this, I think the likelihood of many people selecting the permeable alley is slim to none, except maybe in some of those very green neighborhoods. We have, the most permeable alley is an unpaved alley. So I think the likelihood of our having to spend extra money on a permeable alley that is going to be petitioned is slim. So I'm going to suggest that the committee support 50-50 for permeable, 50-50 for impermeable. And let's do it for a year and see how many petitions we get. I think that I don't think that we should do a different percentage for different kinds of alleys. I don't think it's going to be an incentive to do permeable alleys by giving residents 40% because it's still expensive. So let's do 50-50 and see what happens.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Director Robinson, for the good information. Alley paving is an expensive undertaking for both residents and for the city, and I definitely understand your interest in minimizing the city's costs, but I think I'm with Alderman Rainey that in the end, not so many residents are going to opt for the increased cost of a permeable alley, but I definitely don't want to disincentivize the option. I want it to be on an equal basis with a regular alley. And I'd love to see more residents taking it up, and I think that the city ought to hold the residents' hand as we go down this road towards greener alleys, or go down the greener alley road, or go down the greener alley. But I don't think we should disincentivize it by thrusting more of the cost of the better alley on residents. I'm not sure how much it'll add up to in a year, but I'd like to try the 50-50 on both categories of alleys.
And that's exactly what I was asking for last time. I wasn't wanting the city, I was just to be on par, the same 50-50 as with the regular. So do we have, I think,
I'd like
direction?
to move that.
Okay.
That we direct staff to bring back a 50-50.
Do you have a second?
Both kinds of.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, I think, do we have a motion for adjournment? Second.
So city council should begin at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, it's a great.